Hi guys, it's Megan from imamom2.wordpress.com. So I did a video about kind of me returning to school almost 2 years ago now, and I will link that below. But I had some questions about what I actually do in my placement as well. So I thought I would answer them. So at this placement, I'm actually at a community center, but it's not like an exercise community center. It's actually a center for the community. And it used to be a church. It used to be a church run by Mennonites, and then it changed hands. I'm not really sure how it changed hands now that I am saying this out loud, but anyway, it changed hands and is no longer a church, but is still kind of a staple of the community in that part of town. And it runs so many programs. It's actually really amazing to see what happens here. So one of the smaller programs, but kind of the main program that I was brought in for, was the seniors program. And that happens on Tuesdays. Where there's about 50 to, I think one of our busier days was about 70 seniors would come in for a hot lunch. And the lunch is served at noon, goes till 1, and then there's a program of some kind that happens after that. During my placement, I saw stuff like an exercise program, like a seated exercise program happen. We also did sing-alongs. We did one day where we actually watched, this was so awesome, we watched 2 episodes of Golden Girls. And it was awesome to just, well, one, they were shocked that I loved Golden Girls so much, but just to be able to kind of sit back, relax, and watch TV with their friends, which was great. We also did a bingo, which was so much fun. And just getting to know these amazing people. There was one day where it was the 70th anniversary of an event that happened in the Second World War. And before the program itself started, but after lunch, the person that was leading the program actually did a, where were you on this day? And I was completely humbled by just the life experiences that these men and women have been through in their lifetime. And like one person, I didn't know what to do with it. One lady, she said that on that day, she was hanging white sheets out the window to surrender. Like, over in Europe, like, I didn't know what to do with this. I was fortunate to get all 3 of my grandfathers back from the war, but it just, they all passed away years ago, but the people that are part of the seniors program experienced all of this, and it was so fascinating to sit and chat with them during the lunch program, for example, and find out one of the gentlemen, he started out in IT in the early 70s and finished in 1999. He went from servers that were as large as a room down to working on little laptops. Like, can you imagine just going through that type of change in technology for your career? It's amazing. Some of the other services, though, that are offered to these seniors is not all just lunch and and programs, but there's a coordinator that will go out, do friendly visiting. We'll also do home assessments. We'll go and sit with somebody who has nobody to come and sit with them in the hospital. We'll help with the transition from home to long-term care facility. There's one of the clients, his place suddenly got overridden with bugs. So she coordinated cleaning out his apartment, like all this kind of stuff, right? But that's the kind of information that you can get when you're involved with the community as much as this organization is. Let's see, on Thursdays were kind of my at the computer day. So my initial thoughts and concerns of, oh my goodness, how am I going to manage being on a computer all day long again when I haven't worked outside the home in more than 5 years, totally alleviated. I was only at the computer on Thursdays. That's it. So my computer days were, I would say, the lesser part of an SSW type of role, a social service worker role. Those days more captured what my previous career had been, where I used to actually be a fundraiser. And so I was able to help create some systems to be able to make data collection and production for funders a little bit easier for my colleagues. It sounds very, very boring. I know this. They all teased me about it, but the executive director and I, the executive director is kind of like your CEO or president of a company. She and I would like get into these, you know, head battles of how am I going to make this work and generate this data so that the funder will be happy and continue to fund us. But because I have the fundraising experience, I was able to think the way a funder does, and I have the computer knowledge to be able to create these spreadsheets to be able to make the data easier. So basically they've gone from 2 or 3 people having to collect all the data for about 3 or 4 days to produce reports for funders, down to volunteers can now just input the data continuously throughout the program, and the final report is automatically generated for them. And crazy me, that's a lot of fun in my world. But the part that I am going to miss the most from this placement is actually the food bank. We run a food bank Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 11:30 till 2. Initially, when I started, there was not a food bank coordinator. Somebody was brought on a temporary contract basis to be able to be the coordinator to kind of help run the actual pantry part of the food bank. And before she was brought on, it was a very, very physical part of the job, was actually setting up the pantry, setting up all the boxes, unloading the truck that came in once a week, and it's like hand bombing pallets of food off. But I did it. I mean, I've absolutely no problem doing that. If nothing else, I'm never shied away from hard work. But it was fascinating to me because I used to work for the Canadian Association of Food Banks, and this was 15 years ago, maybe more now. So I actually, when I worked there, saw the beginning of the food bank distribution line. So companies would call in saying, you know, and it might just be that something went wrong on the package. The color wasn't right on the package of cereal, like the cereal box or something. And they wouldn't discover it for like 20 pallets. And they would call into the Canadian Association of Food Banks, which is now called Food Banks Canada, and say, we've got 20 pallets of cereal. And CAFB would then distribute it according to a distribution process across Canada. So then what happens here is it goes from that organization to a kind of distribution center, for lack of a better term. That sounds really like organizational, administrative heavy, but it's not. But it kind of goes there, and then all the smaller food banks in town, there's about 15 of them that are not like the, you know, little tiny churches that offer, you know, here's a little tiny basket of food type of thing. But the larger ones like ours that are open 3 days a week to process, that actually hand out food for about 200 families. So then we would go and pick it up from this distribution center to be able to hand out to clients, as well as accepting donations from the general public as well. So to actually see from a professional standpoint, from the beginning of the food bank distribution chain all the way to the actual end user physically taking their food out of the building and taking it home, it was a pretty fascinating process. I loved doing the food bank intake part, which meant that I was actually the one that was kind of processing people in. So recording that they were there, making sure that they were only there the once a month, because that's all the food, like, that's what the rules were for the food that we get in, is people can come in every 4 weeks. And the big part of the intake that I really, really enjoyed doing, and enjoy may be the wrong word, but that's just what I'm going to use right now, was actually making the community referrals and helping a client feel more calm about their situation, or at least feel like they've been listened to. The first week, if not 2 weeks, were very emotionally difficult for me, but somehow I figured out how to kind of do put it some distance or put a barrier, or I'm not sure, but without it being this physical barrier, but kind of to protect myself emotionally, because I would be hearing anywhere from 35 to 55 stories a day of each of these clients. And I mean, some of them, it's just they're down on their luck, right? Like, I had somebody come in last week, a younger couple, and his father passed away from cancer last year. 5 months later, his mother passed away from emphysema. During that time, he's been busy dealing with the estates and all this, and all the paperwork that goes into it all, and clearing out the parents' home, and hasn't been able to work because he's been doing this. And then his girlfriend got laid off about 2 months ago. She's now been called back to work, but she gets paid once a month. So even when she goes back to work next week, it'll still be a month before she gets paid. So, you know, just, they're down on their luck. It's just been one of those years for them. That's the way it is. And then there's other families that would come in, and it's generational. There was one day where I had a grandmother, a mother, and an adult daughter, and all the respective family members from there that all came in because they all needed help. And just the stories that people have are humbling. And if you don't emotionally protect yourself, then they can be crippling to you as well. But as the food bank intake role, my job was to at least try to help in some way, empower them to be able to access other community organizations if they're not already accessing them. And that could be that, you know, they go to this organization for help to rewrite their resume, or this organization over here because they are currently experiencing homelessness and they need a phone number and somewhere to have their mail sent. And well, this organization, not the one I was working for, but another organization in town, will actually keep a file folder with your name in it so that you can have mail received there. So that you can have things like a bank account, because you can't have a bank account if there's no address to send the statement to. And there's also public phones at this place that you can use for free. So if you're calling around to look for jobs, you can actually give that phone number for them to call back. So it's these little things that people just don't think of. So as I was doing this, one of my colleagues actually, and she watches my videos, so hi, you know who you are, she said to me one day, you know, how do you know of all these organizations to refer people to? And I'm like, I don't know, I just know them. They're just in my brain somehow. So then she asked me to put together some kind of resource so that other people could also refer clients to these organizations in town. So today being my last day, I finally finished putting together this binder, and I did a haul a few weeks ago now with plastic inserts to be able to put the information in it, basically of all of the community resources that I've referred people to throughout the 200 hours that I've been working there. So that the next person can also access that information and hand that over to people as well. So in that was information like different shelters in town, the organization that I mentioned that has this mail capability, the Women's Center, an at-risk youth program, these kind of things that I just know what they are, right? But now there's actually something to hand over to clients so that they don't have to try to remember at the end of the day, 12 hours after they spoke with that redhead this morning, what was the organization's name that she told me to go, or that she suggested I go to. So that was the part of the job that I really truly enjoyed the most. And I wasn't sure how I would handle it, but that's the part that I know I'm going to miss the most. When I was off last week, when the kids were home, I actually couldn't wait to get back into work at placement to be able to go back to food bank intake. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do for the rest of the summer when I'm home and can't do food bank intake. But thankfully they were able to hire somebody to come in to at least get them through to the end of the summer. To be able to work in food bank intake. They were able to secure some funding for a short-term contract for that. So I trained her today before I left. So if you have any questions at all, because I'm not sure if I've answered any questions or answered the questions that were asked of me, or if these have maybe prompted more questions. So feel free to ask them in the comments below. If you have any comments, feel free to put them down there as well. I will answer as many as I can, because I really, really enjoyed this placement, and I'm looking forward to wherever I get placed for my next two. Probably at this time of year for the next couple years again. It seemed to work well, but hopefully I can find somewhere that can actually accommodate my availability again. So that's about it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.